Hi, I'm Paul Battaglia. Welcome to section 2.7, Graphs of Rational Functions. I'm joined today by Carla and Dave. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
Yeah.
We're going to talk to you today a little bit about how we can structure our lesson so that students really get the most out of this topic. And I know, Dave, you were talking a little bit before about an activity that you like to kind of do with your students just to get them to understand really what they're looking at.
Yeah, so whenever I start my lessons for this topic, I like to start with the most basic type of function, maybe 1 over x, and slowly build from that foundation to show them, why does 1 over x look like this graph? Well, we can plug in different numbers just to see what happens, right? If you plug in a 1, you have 1 over 1, which gives you 1. If you plug in a 2, it becomes 1/2. Plug in 3, it becomes 1/3, right? And slowly, by plotting different examples, you can start seeing the graph build. And then from there, you would plug in maybe a 0 to show them here's an asymptote and why asymptotes exist, that no matter what, the line never touches, right? From there, we start building on and maybe adding numbers to the denominators, adding numbers to the numerators, adding numbers to write off the fraction, or what happens when you multiply the top by a number, what happens when you multiply the bottom, right? And so we're able to see how these graphs develop live right in front of the student. So they can see, here's the basic model, and when you add 3, it goes like this, right? When you multiply by 5, here's what happens, right? And maybe even giving the students some time to let them use their own graphing calculators to experiment what happens when you adjust different parts of this basic foundation of a function, and let them see how these different functions can evolve.
I think that's a great approach because you're really putting it in their hands. You're getting them into it themselves. You're not really lecturing or anything of that sort. And I think to that point, Carla, you have a really nice activity that you like to use with your students just based on the assumption that you as the teacher don't necessarily know what they may or may not know, right?
Exactly, and I always like to do a warm-up because sometimes there'll be new kids from a different school and not everybody's on the same playing field. So I always start with a warm-up. I'll put maybe 4 or 5 kids together and find out what they do know with a writing activity. So I expect everybody would know what an intercept and a 0 is, but that's not always the case. Maybe another kid will peer edit. It's like, well, it's this. And then, oh, I know what that is. So, or somebody will be like, I never learned that before. So together, they kind of figure out what they know, and then I can categorize them in terms of who needs more work and moving forward.
And I think that's a great way to differentiate that instruction, like Dave and Carla have both told us. And I think one of the things we do want to be aware of as teachers in terms of errors that our students make, 2 things I'm going to give you in particular to watch out for. One has to do with, as Dave mentioned before, using that graphing calculator. So as students are experimenting and they're graphing different functions, you might find that they see some graphing calculators and graphing utilities will show a line that almost looks like it's connecting those 2 branches of the rational function. Obviously, that's not supposed to be there, so we don't want our students to think that that's a part of the graph. So make sure that they understand that. Secondly, as you get into the latter part of the section and we talk about slant asymptotes, I think it's up to you as the teacher as to how in-depth you'd like to get. I mean, you can keep it simple as we've done in terms of leaving the denominator in a linear fashion. If you have more time and you want to explore using long division to find those slant asymptotes, you can certainly do that as well. I hope these tips have been helpful for you. Good luck in section 2.7.